$160.79 and insert $34,833. Under recommended purchase price for 1328 Sargent Street, please delete $20,254.82 and insert $35,167. Under protests on pages 55 to 56, item number 7, Bureau of Procurement, contract number 08000, 800 megahertz radio facilities maintenance agreement. Statements of opposition have been received from Veterans Enterprises Consulting Services, LLC, Key Community, Matthew Kennedy Development Corporation, the PDC Group, Barbara Robinson, and Black Steel. Under deferrals and withdrawals on page 78, Department of Public Works, Office of Engineering and Construction, partial release of retainage, WC number 1405, repaving, utility cuts, and sidewalk restoration at various locations is being deferred until October 6th. The following items are being moved to the non-routine agenda. On pages 4 and 5, Department of Real Estate, assignment of tax sale. On page 55 and 56, item number 7, Bureau of Procurement, contract number 08000, 800 megahertz radio facilities maintenance agreement. No items are being moved to the routine agenda. The following abstentions have been received by the board. I will be abstaining on page 3, Office of the Comptroller reimbursement. Director of Public Works, Jason Mitchell, is abstaining on pages 23 and 24, items number 22 and 23, Department of Public Works personnel, and on page 102, item number 5, Department of Public Works travel, Yosef Kabede. And those are all the abstentions we have received. We have received no votes and no rejection of recommended awards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I now would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated September the 27th, 2021, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections or additions that have been noted by our comptroller. At this point, I would like to entertain a motion to approve all items contained in the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the routine agenda, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda has been adopted. Now on to our first item from a non-routine agenda perspective. It can be found on pages 4 through 5, on the Department of Real Estate assignment of tax sale certificate. And this involves the sale of now 2 vacant properties to the Southwest Partnership. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Andy Frank of the Department of Real Estate to walk us through the item and corrections noted earlier by the comptroller. Mr. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President and honorable members of the board. Andy Frank, Real Estate Officer. The board is being asked to approve the sale of 2 tax sale certificates to Southwest Partnership for properties in the Washington Village Pigtown neighborhood. Southwest Partnership would pay an approximately $35,000 each, and if approved, these longstanding vacant properties will be renovated and sold for home ownership. The sale of the tax sale certificates is typically routine, but we wanted the opportunity to explain how Southwest Partnership has modified its approach following the release of a related Baltimore City Inspector General public synopsis in June of 2021. The OIG synopsis determined that a proposed memorandum of understanding between Baltimore City and a community organization later identified to be Southwest Partnership would provide the partnership with a perceived unfair advantage over other developers and community organizations interested in doing business with the city through the tax sale. In that case, Southwest Partnership wanted to work with the city to match tax sale certificate opportunities in targeted areas with experienced high-quality developers. The developers would renovate and sell the vacant properties to low and moderate income families. By purchasing tax sale certificates and partnering with developers, Southwest Partnership wanted to ensure that vacant properties did not end up in the hands of slum landlords or subpar rehabbers with a history of poor workmanship. The Office of Inspector General expressed 3 concerns. 1, The city was providing Southwest Partnership and its vetted developers with a perceived unfair advantage. 2, the partnership was charging a fee to developers. And 3, the partnership was participating in profit sharing. Southwest Partnership disagreed with these findings, but as I shared in an email to the Inspector General in the Mayor's office, the partnership modified the process to address the OIG's concerns. In the case of these 2 properties, there will be no third-party developers. Southwest Partnership will act as a developer, using its own funds to purchase the certificates, foreclose on the right of redemptions, take title to the properties, secure financing, contract with construction contractors, and sell directly to new homeowners. Again, Southwest Partnership has confirmed there will be no vetting of third-party developers, no charging of fees, and no profit sharing. The sale of these 2 tax sale certificates to Southwest Partnership benefits the city in numerous ways. First, it raises approximately $70,000 in tax revenue. Second, it eliminates vacant and blighted properties and strengthens neighborhoods. Third, it provides high-quality affordable housing to lower and moderate income families. Fourth, generates ongoing tax revenue for the city. And I'll note that the alternative is that these properties, with their tax lien amounts substantially higher than their market value, will continue to deteriorate and bring down blocks in which they're located. They would probably not be available for tax sale again until 2023. For these reasons, Mr. President, honorable members of the board, the Department of Real Estate recommends approval of this action.
Thank you, Officer Frank. A couple quick questions. Why was the price changed on the Sargent Avenue properties?
Yeah, it's my responsibility to review and sign off on all board members. And in this case, the 2 numbers were transposed and I missed it. It's my mistake and I take full responsibility for it, and I'll be more careful in the future.
So it was just an accident. The $20,000 difference was just almost a typo.
Yeah, the practice of the vendor lien program is to take the higher of the assessed value or the flat taxes in water. In this case, we listed on the original board member the lower.
Gotcha. Is there a system in place to ensure that we don't do that going forward, or is that kind of just?
I'm going to evaluate what happened, in particular the role that I play in reviewing these memos, and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you. And with the Glendon Avenue property, why was that removed from the agenda?
In that case, what Southwest Partnership wants to do is order an appraisal. The vendor lien program allows the purchaser certificates to order an appraisal, and if that appraised value is lower than the assessed value, then we can use the assessed value, and then we can use the appraisal. In this case, there's time to do that, and Southwest Partnership wants to order an appraisal and then see what that number is, and then determine whether or not it wants to proceed with the purchase of the certificate.
And we didn't get an appraisal for the Sargent Avenue properties either.
No, typically we use the assessed value, but the purchaser certificate has the option of ordering an appraisal. And in most cases, the assessed value is the best indication of value. In this case, Southwest Partnership thinks the assessed value is inflated and wants the opportunity to order an appraisal.
Yeah, because the assessed value doesn't really factor in, I guess, ongoing trends associated with the neighborhood. It just kind of assesses the value at that particular point in the triennial assessment, correct?
Correct.
At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? For this particular item, I'm going to ask that we defer it to the next meeting. I would like to talk to members of Southwest Partnership as well as yourself, Officer Frank.
Mr. President, respectfully, these certificates have 2 years to be filed in the courts, and this was an October 2019 purchase, or this was a 2019 in the 2019 tax sale, and so these certificates are about to expire, and for that reason, Southwest Partnership asked us to get this on the agenda for today, so they have enough time to file with the courts. Otherwise, these 2 certificates will expire, and these opportunities for renovations will not be possible.
So we can bring it back up next week. That's my suggestion to the board. This is the first time on this agenda that I'm hearing of these 2 items. In lieu of the troubling report and the issues associated with the report that you read, I think it's important that we do our due diligence. I think there's going to be a lot of questions and concerns from the community. And I think delaying it by 1 week, hopefully it still fits into the schedule. My assumption is that we delayed it so long to provide maybe some time away from the report, but I think it's really important in the public transparency and interest that we provide our due diligence in understanding and knowing exactly what's going to take place associated with these properties. I appreciate you kind of going down, I guess, the MOU that's been established to ensure that some of the practices that were happening in the past no longer continue. But I think it's important and incumbent for all of us on this board to have the appropriate time in ensuring that we're comfortable with this relationship moving forward. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, thank you, Mr. Frank, for your time. We're going to move on. Mr. Comptroller, I see your hand raised.
I just wanted to ask a logistical question of, is your office going to put together the meetings with Southwest Partnership, or would you like Mr. Frank to do that since you want him to participate in the discussions as well?
No, we'll do it. But thanks for the question, Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you.
At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, thank you, Mr. Frank, again. We're going to move on to the last and final item on today's non-routine agenda. It can be found on pages 55 through 56. Item number 7, contract number 8,000, 800 megahertz radio facilities maintenance agreement. This is an extension to existing service agreement with Motorola Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $2,671,660.35. A protest was received, but as noted by the comptroller, not really a protest from a competitive vendor, more or less letters of concern from community and business leaders were received from several individuals and organizations, including Veterans Enterprises Consulting Services, LLC, Key Community, the Honorable Barbara Robinson, Matthew Henson Community Development Corporation, the PDC Group, and Black Steel. At this time, I would like to welcome representatives from the Law Department, Procurement, or the Administration to explain this item to the board. Please note that this was an item that was brought to the board back in June with some concerns because at that time, all minority women business enterprise goals were waived. That was a concern that was addressed to the administration. The administration decided to take it off of the agenda and reevaluate the assessment to waive the minority women participation requirements. I guess 4 months later, we're bringing it back, and now it's time for the Law Department, Procurement, and anyone else from administration to kind of walk us through that process. So who would like to go first? I see Chief Brown in Procurement with her hand raised. So Chief Brown, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, President Mosby. Good morning, Honorable Board. The Bureau of Procurement is bringing today a request to approve an extension for contract 8,000 for 800 megahertz radio facility maintenance agreement to Motorola Solution, Inc. This request is being asked for continuity of governmental operations, and it is our intent to publicly solicit. I want to make note in all transparency that this contract has IMBU goals set that for the extension as a revision, and the commitment forms was signed by the supplier Motorola Solutions, those being MBE 15% and 5% for WBE, and the total amount of the extension is $2,671,660.35.
Thank you, Chief Brown. Can you walk us through the difference between when the administration originally waived all participation requirements for this and where we are today?
If you don't mind, President Mosley, I respectfully ask that I could defer to the IMBU chief, Mr. Lundy, who I believe is on the call, or Deputy Solicitor Ingram.
Yes, Madam Chief. Chief Lundy or Deputy Solicitor, would you like to take it? Chief Lundy, I see your hand raised. I yield the floor to you. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. President and honorable members of the board. Yes, so since this was previously before the board in June with all of the goals waived, we have arrived, as the purchasers stated, at 15% MBE, 5% WBE goals. For IMBU, this is a corrective action. Contract did not previously have any goal we wanted to ensure that there would be MBE and WBE participation on this extension without having to wait for the next contract to come due before we put the goals in place. What I did in reaching these goals is we did a review and evaluation of the scope of the work for the contract, which has been narrowed and limits the amount of work that can be segmented. And we determined what out of the available remaining work, what can be segmented and subcontracted to MBE, WBEs, the availability of MBE, WBEs to perform the work. And this was done in conjunction with conversations with procurement, BSID, Browns, because they had also submitted a capabilities letter previously regarding the work that they did on this contract, and also Motorola. I would say the key consideration is that the prior MBE performance was achieved with a different scope of work. The scope of work that we have now has been narrowed, and this is due in part to many of the services that were performed previously by the MBE subcontractor have been brought in-house by BSIT as a cost-saving measure on this contract. An unfortunate effect of that cost saving has been that reduction of the contract scope that's impacted the amount of work that can be actually subcontracted. In setting the goals on this contract, oftentimes we hear the 27% MBE and 10% WBE participation goals. I just want to be clear that those are our annual participation goals for MBOO, and they're aspirational. We set those goals to help in our annual evaluation of seeing the effectiveness of the Minority and Women's Business Enterprise Program. But additionally, they're not quotas and they're not set goals that we put on every contract. We do a individualized basis and review of each contract and each scope of work within that contract and the availability of MBEs and WBEs to do the work. And that's in accordance with the code provisions and also the MBOO regulations. And in this case, unfortunately, in evaluating the marketplace and the past performance, we only have one MBE that has all the required certifications, specializations to work on this contract. Motorola has yet to identify a WBE that can work on this contract. We have been in discussions with Motorola, provided them with our certified telecommunications firms, and I know they've been in contact with some WBEs to see if there's a potential now, as we sit here today, time having passed with this contract, that are capable of doing the work. But it was very important to MBOO that we put goals in place, but at the same time recognize the reality of the availability of MBEs or WBEs to work on these contracts. And when we only have one vendor, it's harder to set the goals higher when you don't have that same availability present. As stated, Motorola has committed to adhering to these goals going forward for the extension. One of the things we're doing, MBOO's doing in conjunction with BSIT, is working to grow the available certified firms in the telecommunications sector. We're going to be doing that via outreach. Also, in the process of doing the new contract, we're going to be in discussions to try to see if there's ways within that scope of work that we can find additional opportunities for MBE and WBE participation. Additionally, MBOO's working to include training language in city contracts similar to the prior Baltimore apprenticeship training program, so that we can ensure MBEs and WBEs can receive training to gain any additional expertise that's needed to work on this contract and other IT contracts to avoid any aspect of future waivers as we move forward.
So, Mr. Lundy, thank you for that explanation. And just for full disclosure, I had an opportunity to have a briefing with BSIT as well as with Mr. Lundy and some other members of the administration, I believe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, regarding this particular item. At the time, I had several questions and concerns, particularly as it relates to the city performing its due diligence around the capabilities of the potential minority or women-owned businesses that could partner with Motorola on this particular contract. Mr. Lundy, I'm still having a significant amount of concerns and questions. I think, unfortunately, it has probably a lot to do with my background in telecommunications and evaluating this as an 800 megahertz frequency system. The one question I have, and I'm going to ask the administration to provide, is just an itemized list of that scope of work that you talked about. You did your evaluation, and then mashing that up with the capabilities of whatever MBE or WBE approved vendors that we have to ensure that, based off of what I've heard directly from Motorola, as well as what I've heard directly from the administration, that there's only a 15% wiggle room associated with the work that we feel that this vendor can perform. So again, I'm just asking for us to look at that formal evaluation of understanding what that scope of work is in comparison to the capabilities and certifications of the MBE or WBE partners that we have identified. So we've asked that formally, and I'm asking again. So, I look forward to kind of reviewing that. The next question or the next issue or concern that I'm finding, again, this is from an extension that the administration put forth with 0 MBE and 0 WBE participation requirements on the onset back in June. Pulled it off. The administration has come back with this 15 and 5 solution. The question I have is, I keep hearing that there is not much wiggle room based off of the new scope of work because the past radio work that Chief Carter, in his great wisdom and leadership, decided to bring in-house because he's been able to attract the skill set to perform those functions. And my assumption is that he brought it in-house as a cost-effective, as well as an increase of operations and efficiency just for the city perspective. So I don't think that that is the crux of the matter today. What I think the crux of the matter is, and what I keep hearing from the administration, is we're going to work over the next year to help identify the marketplace perspective in hopes that we find that there will be more available vendors as well as, prepared to kind of take on this work. Well, the confusion is, if 15% is all that we think is currently in the scope of work, that Motorola, from a proprietary perspective, is a term that the administration has consistently used. From Motorola's perspective, that 15% is all that can be given out, whether it's to an MBE, WBE, or to any sub. Finding additional subcontractors moving forward, certifying more folks, doing the training that you kind of mentioned, Mr. Lundy. I'm not sure what changes will occur between now and next year if we're successful in growing and identifying 5 other businesses. I think that there is a huge issue of that scope of work, the itemized scope of work, and the capabilities that the MBE or WBE that have been identified can kind of match up. Can you explain what's going to change over the next year? Because the scope of work isn't going to change. But could you explain what will change over the next year if we're able to find 1, 2, or 3 other vendors associated with this 15% goal that we have, 15 and 5% goal that we have currently today?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. What I see changing is whenever we have one of these contracts come in, for one, MBU is always going to do that market assessment at the time. So the hope is that some things will change in our marketplace in the next year. Obviously, all that is not within the control of MBU in terms of whether there becomes more businesses that have that specialization or become certified in the area. One of the things of my outreach that I'm doing is trying to find additional people, not only in the tech sector, but throughout all of our services that we offer on city contracts to become certified. We often have businesses that are right here in the marketplace that may not already be certified with MBU. So there may be a vendor that's here that doesn't have the certification that would be able to count towards the participation goals. Beyond that, in terms of the scope of work, we are doing everything we can within the current scope of work for this extension. I will be in discussions with procurement and also BSIT so that when we write the next contract, we can have a scope of work that has the ability to have greater participation. This is the point we've gotten to in this renewal, but I don't know that the contract has to be structured that way. But obviously, it's a technical issue that I would have to give some deference to BSIT and procurement in terms of what they require.
Mr. Lundy, with all due respect, when we talk about the scope of work for maintenance and upkeep of this 800 megahertz system, nothing is going to change. The system Is the system today will be the system tomorrow is probably the same system that we had in place over the next 5 and 10 years. I mean, you know, Motorola, the vendor that we always write these bids to, you know, their end-to-end equipment is going to change. Their certifications are going to change. But as it relates to the meat and potatoes associated with the scope of work for, again, the upkeep and maintenance of the system, that doesn't change. I guess my bigger question, and I'm going to get to you, Chief Carter, but I think my bigger question for you, Mr. Lundy, if I was able to identify, say, 3 other vendors today, what changes with the 15% that MBU is putting forward? What I'm hearing from Motorola is nothing changes. What I'm hearing from the administration, nothing changes. But what my background tells me is that there probably are other items that a certified minority or women-owned vendor can do that's left in that other 85% of the work. So again, I'm just going to this idea that somehow we're going to train up and maybe identify and look in the marketplace other minority or women-owned companies, but the scope of work is really not going to change. And if we've done our formal evaluation, if we've done our due diligence, if we are, you know, coming from the perspective of diversity and equity to this board, and we know that these contracts, particularly these IT contracts, have historically been utilized, provided the opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses, and it seems systematic. And the concern is on this one, where we have identified a minority or women-owned business that potentially has the capability of performing the scope of work that's remaining on this job, and us not going down the path of ensuring that we try to reach a goal of 27%, which we normally, again, do not do at all on any IT jobs. It's just really, really concerning to me, and I think it is. I think it's contrary to the directive that the mayor has constantly put out there around driving equity, particularly as it relates to the Board of Estimates. Chief Carter, I saw your hand raised at this point before you.
Chief Lundy, were you going to reply before I start?
If you don't mind, briefly, Mr. President, may I speak?
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. Chief Lundy. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say, I agree with your concerns regarding underutilization completely, and that's why it's a priority to MBU that we have goals on this contract, because there hasn't been a history of utilization and on something that has previously had the goals waived. We want to make sure that we're putting that in place. As we go forward, I do think that the scope of work can change, as we've seen over time when we went from a broader scope on this contract to where we are now with a more narrow scope with some things being brought in-house. I haven't had an opportunity to discuss with Director Carter in terms of whether those services that were brought in-house, how cost-effective they've been, and whether he would want to remain with those services in-house, or if that's something that we could again add back into the scope of the contract going forward. But it would be something that we would be trying to work to find a way to have additional aspects of the scope that would be able to be segmented and subcontracted. But there's 2 issues in terms of where we are today with the extension and where we would be going forward in the future. As to the extension, as we sit here today, this is the applicable amount of work that can be segmented to the subcontractor that's available under the agreement. When we get to the next contract, we will have the ability to potentially alter the scope, but that's discussions I would definitely be having with BSIT and procurement as we move forward.
Now, with all due respect, Chief Lundy, who provided you with the information that the scope of work, that the 15% that we've identified is the only thing inside of the scope of work that a vendor outside of Motorola could perform for this particular job?
That'd be a combination. That would be the determinations of my office in reviewing the scope, the information that I've gained from meeting with BSIT and their representations regarding the work that was brought in-house to narrow the scope of the work of the contract, and also the representations of Motorola and the capabilities of what Browns has done historically on the contract with the things that were within the scope of the work at the time.
Again, I think that we can't compare, we're trying to compare apples to oranges. I appreciate you saying that you've done the evaluation. I appreciate the fact that you've leaned on BSIT from their subject matter expertise to help you do that evaluation. What I don't find helpful to our discussion right now is looking at the historic work that this prime vendor has given out to its subs. That wasn't based off of the end all be all capabilities of those subs. That was just based off of the work that was segmented to provide opportunities for the subs on that particular contract. So I think what has to happen from the administration, and what I've constantly asked from the administration, is that when we look at that full scope of work and we compare it to the capabilities of whatever approved minority or women-owned business that we have out there, what are the disconnects? What are the things that they are not capable of doing, that they do not have the certification to do, that they do not have the insurance and bonding to meet the needs of the city or the needs of Motorola here? That is the discussion that I am really interested in having, and that I have not been able to really receive from the administration over the past week and a half since we had our original discussion. Chief Lundy, before I go to Chief Carter again, is there any additional points or information that you would like to provide to the board?
Yes, Mr. President. Just addressing that directly, it's my understanding respectfully that was what has been undertaken in what BSID did in looking at the scope of the work that existed originally under the contract, what was brought in-house and the narrowing and what exists. They had an understanding of what Browns could do based on the original scope of work, not just simply what Motorola was giving them, but what they were capable of doing under that contract. And once the things were subtracted from the scope, this is what we're left with. So it has been in coordination with BSID in doing that evaluation of what actually exists of available work for the subcontractor.
Yes, sir. Well, that's definitely, Chief, what I'm interested in evaluating. I want to see that itemized scope of work, and I would like to better understand and know whatever approved minority or women-owned business does not have the ability to do. I do have one additional question, Chief Lundy, before we move on to Chief Carter. When I look at the goal that has been set forth, it's 15 and 5, 15 minority, 5 women. 15 plus 5 obviously equals 20. So obviously, I think that we've identified 20% of the work inside of this contract could be segmented away from Motorola. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so if that is the case, and I think it's been determined that Motorola has tried, and there are no approved WBEs, however, there is an approved MBE, why wouldn't the MBE for the 20% that we know of to date have access and the opportunity to perform 20% of the work?
For one, I would say we're still trying to determine. I haven't heard back from Motorola on the WBE side. There are approved telecommunication WBEs. It's because of the particularized nature of this contract and the scope of work. They were reaching out at the time to ensure or make the determination, that is, as far as whether those WBEs had all the requisite certifications and expertise to undertake the work. So I left the goals in because I did want to give opportunities not only for MBEs, but for women-owned businesses as well, and encourage Motorola to continue to try to work and seek out to try to get that participation on this contract and not just completely close out the opportunity for women-owned.
Yes, sir. Well, in my discussion with Motorola, I believe it was yesterday, my days are running together. They've determined that they could not find any capable in the marketplace, women-led companies to perform any of that work. So I'll ask that you go back and you communicate with Motorola to ensure that what they've communicated to me is accurate. And then if that is the case, it would appear that there will be at least some wiggle room to potentially move up the minority participation in this particular contract. Thank you, Chief Lundy. Do you have any additional questions or concerns at this time? No. Okay, at this point, I'm going to move to Chief Carter from Baltimore City IT Department. I believe you had your hand raised earlier, Chief Carter.
Sure. Good morning, Council President and members of the board. A number of things that I was going to say, Chief Lundy provided, but I wanted to give a couple of context points for the board to consider, because one, this is a critical service that we do receive. And as we look at that service, it includes things such as inspecting and maintenance of our towers for 800 megahertz systems, the radio repair, facility maintenance, network and security monitoring, on-site support 24/7 and 365 days per year. It provides us service that we deeply and truly need to maintain that 800 megahertz system. And to that end, we hired additional talent just recently. And as we began and charged that talent to look at all of our processes, our data, our workflows, our equipment, our contracts, and to how do we optimize the effective use of this 800 megahertz system for the Baltimore City, because we haven't had talent focused on optimizing that particular service. And so our original intent in bringing this forward was to give us 1 year so that we could do that deep dive into this contract and other contracts and other services provided, and competitively bid what we could and let the market give us choices that potentially we don't have today. Our goal in bringing it to the board initially was to do just that. And some of the questions that you raised, some of the detail that you asked about in terms of the specific line item services, what can and can't be segmented, what can be packaged differently moving forward. Those are the kind of things that we were going to look at in figuring out how do we best structure this contract in a way that gives Baltimore the best services that it deserves, but also gives opportunities for Motorola, other primes, and other subs to do this type of work.
Understood, Chief Carter. And let's just be clear. And first and foremost, thank you for your leadership in, again, identifying ways of bringing work in-house to drive for more effectiveness and efficiency around city operations, particularly this critical operations to the general public. We're talking about the 800 megahertz frequency radio system. It's basically for lack of a better term, walkie-talkie system for EMT, fire, police, and emergency members. It's the way that they communicate back and forth. So that's the importance of this. And I think some of the items inside of the scope of work that Chief Carter laid out explain why they're so important. You know, really having a system that is robust, that's diverse, that is available 24/7 consistently. It's critical to emergency operations. Again, I think that the concern is, and again, let me be really clear, is that this was brought to this board originally in June, 4 months ago, with zero minority participation and zero women business participation goals, which was problematic and which is why we pulled it off. In over 4 months, we've gotten to this point, and I think what I'm constantly asking, and I'm going to continue to ask the administration, is I would like to see the analysis associated with the scope of work that we have currently outlined in this particular extension, in a comparison of the characteristics, the certifications, and the qualifications of any approved vendors that we currently have in our MBE, WBE program. I think that we can quickly do that analysis and quickly come to the understanding that there's only 15 or 20% of the work that is out there that could be segmented for MBE, WBE goal. I want to also be very clear to this board. It is not my motivation, Mr. Lundy, for us to do this evaluation over the next year and potentially try to drive a work that we were able to build up the skill set in-house to drive that back outside to kind of develop the 27% goal that we all try to achieve when we look at these types of jobs. So that is not at all the motivation of my stance or my position or my concern today. I want to be very, very clear because I think what Chief Carter has done really should be an example throughout many of the administration agencies about how we can pull work in-house. We know from a cost-effective and cost efficiency perspective, many times we gain from that. So with that said, at this point, are there any questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to allow, is Motorola on the phone? Is Barbara Zetek or any members of Motorola here that would like to speak up? Okay,
Good,
hearing and seeing none.
Good
I'm
morning,
sorry.
Mitch Nowak here from Motorola. We appreciate the partnership. We appreciate, continuing the continuity of service for that mission critical system, and believe that we are working very well together with the city to identify and grow that MBE opportunity where it is applicable. So we are here to serve, and we are thankful for the partnership.
No, thank you, Mitch. And I see Barbara camera, your camera just popped on. Would you like to say anything, Barbara, at this point?
No, thank you, Mr. President. Everything Mitch said.
Okay, thank you so much, Barbara and Mitch. At this point, we're going to turn it over. As the comptroller noted earlier, it's not a formal protest because these individuals do not represent companies that were part of this bid process or are related to it. These are just community members. Like we've done in the past of other things, we've allowed folks from the community to, come speak to us on behalf of their perspective associated with the business that we have before the board. I'm going to provide 2 minutes for each person that I call up to give their testimony, provide their opinion of the board. We will not take direct questions from these members directly to the administration. However, you can definitely air out your concern. If that generates a question inside of the board, then we will proceed from there. The first person I have on my list is Mr. Colby Smith, Managing Director of Black Steel. Mr. Smith, are you on the line? Okay, I'm going to move to the next person. The next up, I'm sorry, I missed you, the Honorable former State Senator in the 40th District, Barbara Robinson. Senator Robinson, are you on the phone? Moving down the list, again, these are just the folks that reached out and provided letters of concern and asked to speak. So we're just going through the list, going down the list. The next up is Mr. Daniel Burgess, CEO of Key Community Solutions. Mr. Burgess, are you on the phone? Next up is Mr. Melvin Doc Cheatham. He is president of the Matthew Henson Community Development Corporation. Dr. Cheatham, are you on? Next up is Mr. Peter Daniel Sr., Vice President on behalf of the PDC Group. Mr. Peters, are you on the phone? Mr. Daniels, are you on the phone?
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. The floor is yours.
My apologies. I'm actually at a golf tournament this morning. It was unexpected that I did this, but thank you very much for the opportunity, everyone, to speak.
That would be the Coppin Golf Tournament?
Yes, I'm actually at the conference golf tournament. All right.
Unfortunately, I have to have all this fun at the Board of Estimates, but I knew Coppin's Golf Tournament was today.
Right, but I found this very important. First of all, thanks for the opportunity, for the invite, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to this particular issue. Again, let me just give you a little bit of my background. My firm is a management consulting firm. However, I have 30 years experience in the IT business in terms of the Fortune 500 companies. And I think this actually presents an opportunity for us. First of all, Mr. Mosby, I do believe that what you brought up is something that I've been continually seeing in the industry. That, where the opportunity, both for getting opportunities for MBEs and WEEs to take advantage of these type of contracts. And I think it is very, very important from a economic perspective for our other communities that we do the due diligence in terms of making sure that these opportunities are here. Contracts like these tend to continue for a very extended period of time. So if we do not take advantage of the opportunity to get MBEs and WBEs in, I think what it is, it's actually going to be a missed opportunity. I do agree that sometimes they need to be skilled up, but that is the opportunity that we're looking for, right? To get them skilled up, get them in a position to succeed, and leveraging organizations like Motorola, who is a well-known organization. We should be able to try and take advantage of that, working closely with Motorola to extend these opportunities, these types of training, these type of careers within our community. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for your civic engagement and coming on and providing your background and concerns about this particular issue. To that point, just again for the record, Chief Lundy, how long has this contract been in place? Do you have that right off the top of your head?
I don't have it right in front of me. I'd have to defer to.
Okay, I believe I was thinking it's like 14 years or something like that. I see the hand raised of Comptroller Henry. Comptroller Henry, the floor is yours.
Well, in the agenda, it says that the board approved the initial award on June 23rd, 2016. There may have been previous contracts for which Motorola was the prime, but this current contract that we are extending started in 2016.
Gotcha, yeah. Just for the general public, what Comptroller Henry just communicated is, right now, we're working on a one-year extension to this specific contract. I guess the question that I had was regarding this work. The system has been around for quite some time. How long has Motorola had it with its minority women business goals waived? So Chief Lundy, if you could look that up and provide that to the board. I think that kind of goes to some of the sentiment of what Mr. Peter Daniels just spoke about. And then the last person that I have on my list is Dr. Johnny Simpson, President of Veterans Enterprise Consulting Services, LLC. Mr. Simpson, are you on the line? So that's it. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, obviously, I would like to defer this item. I'll continue to work with Chief Lundy. Really interested in, again, looking at the scope of work, looking at the capabilities associated and tied to that scope of work, understanding and knowing how long we've been down this path on this particular contract. I think I see the hand raised of Chief Carter. Chief Carter, do you have something to add or question or concern? Chief Carter, I'm sorry. I think you're speaking to mute. We can see you, but we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm sorry, Council President, but I think I heard you say deferring this item. And I
Yes.
request if we could approve it. This contract expires, I believe, tomorrow, the 30th of September.
Well, see, this
And-
is an issue, and this is not your issue, Mr. Carter, and I appreciate you providing that information, but this has literally been out there for 4 months. My questions, my concerns regarding this have not changed, and that's about the participation. Now, I appreciate the fact that I believe last week we were able to have a briefing, but for the administration to literally wait to the last minute to put this on the agenda, and particularly knowing the severity and nature of what this system provides to the safety and welfare of our citizens is absolutely unacceptable. I think that through emails I provided to the administration, this was one of my points a couple of weeks ago, that this thing has kind of sat out there without any communication from the administration. And I was fearful that the administration would bring this to the board in certain level of urgency for us to go along and just pass this on. Again, I think that this extension was brought to this board from a business as usual perspective, again, waiving all of the minority women-owned participation. Now, the administration literally waits to the last second to bring it back in front of the board, for the board to do its work in front of the public. And we're doing it a day before the contract is to expire. That's completely unacceptable. And that's not in the vein of partnership that we've constantly pushed for on this board and we've constantly worked through on this board. And I find a tremendous amount of issue knowing that point at this point. So I guess to Chief Carter or anyone else, approving this today doesn't, I guess, allows for the extension to move forward. I'm not sure the process and the paperwork that kind of takes after that. But if it's not approved today, ultimately what happens? I would like someone from the administration to answer that question.
Chief
Chief Brown, I don't know if you want to take, if you would like to take that question, what happens in instances where contracts expire? I think before you do, Chief Brown, it's important to say that this, as Director Carter has mentioned, this is a critical contract and provides for critical infrastructure services that we do not want to expire.
Yeah, so knowing the criticality, Mr. Shorter, why did the administration decide to put it on the Board of Estimates agenda the day before that expiration?
What I will say, Mr. President, is that and I want to appreciate all of the staff who over the last 4 months have been working with you in your office and with Motorola to accommodate the new goal setting. So this is a contract ultimately that has already been approved by this board. In this extension action, what we are attempting to do and what Motorola is voluntarily doing is submitting to additional goals.
Yeah, so again, we have not been part of the discussion, unfortunately. We've attempted and asked to be part of the discussion for the past 4 months. It was actually an email from the Council President's Office General Counsel to the administration calling out this issue, that we did not want to put it back on the Board of Estimates in a frame of urgency. Not that there's some ulterior motives here. I'm not going to be the one to judge that. But my concern was that the administration, knowing the criticality of this, would decide to bring this issue to bear for discussion and public discourse right at the edge of the contract expiring.
What I would say
If you could allow me to finish, with the potential that there was no other alternative for the board but to approve whatever was brought to the board. City Administrator Shorter, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I would say is that this contract, the extension action was brought to this board months ago. That I would not credit the team of staff who work really hard day to day for our city with bringing this action late. This ultimately, thanks to your leadership, the comptroller's leadership, and the mayor's, we are changing what has been a long time pattern, and that is to say that this contract has not had goals. We now do, and are bringing this action based on the feedback from this board months ago.
Let me be really clear. The reason that the administration didn't pass this bill 4 months ago is because we pulled it off of the routine agenda to the non-routine agenda to question the administration on this practice of waiving these types of goals when we have MBE and WBEs that are qualified to perform the work. So that is what happened 4 months ago. And what we're saying is now 4 months later, the day before the contract is to expire, the administration has decided for something that is as critical to emergency systems and services of our city to put this back on the agenda, to basically force this board to approve something without the formal discourse and vetting for a very, very troubling situation. Again, these IT contracts have historically excluded minority and women-owned businesses. We've constantly waived these things, just like this administration attempted to do on this particular contract and this extension 4 months ago. That is completely unacceptable. This board has consistently talked about moving in a new direction and not keeping status quo and business as usual procedures on this board. My concern at this point is we're not even providing for the amount of discourse and discussion between the administration and any other party of this board, because the administration, again, has decided to put this on the agenda the day before the contract is set to expire, knowing the criticality of services. So I'm going to go back to my original question. If we do not approve this today, if the contract expires, what does that mean to city operations? I would like someone from the administration to answer that question.
Mr. President, the Deputy City Solicitor had his hand up earlier. I didn't know if you saw that.
Yeah, Deputy City Solicitor, can you answer that question? The
I
procurement
would,
office, I'm sorry, Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
I would defer to Chief Carter first to give you the operational discussion to then give you a legal analysis of what will occur after that.
What, if the contract is in lapse, it really depends upon what Motorola is or is not going to do. If they decide to suspend or cancel their services, then we would put our 800 megahertz system and the support of it, the functions that it supports at risk.
Thank you, Chief Carter. Chief Brown, from a procurement perspective, contractually, do you have anything to add to this discussion regarding my question?
Absolutely, I do. And I understand, President Mosby, the perception, but this is a long process in the Bureau of Procurement of preparing these letters and bringing them back to board. So on behalf of the integrity of the process of the Bureau of Procurement presenting this contract back to the board, there was no latent or hidden agenda on that. On July 14th, 2021, this item was pulled and deferred by President Council Office to revisit the scope and the MBE WBE goals. We all share in that concern and that mission and new vision moving forward, and it did take some time. I do not see where any inappropriate behaviors happened in that process, and Bureau Procurement timely presented it back to the board, which takes like 2 to 3 weeks prior to actually getting on the agenda. So I just wanted to speak to that, and thank you.
No, thank you, Chief Brown. And, for the record, I want to state, I do not intend to think that I know that there were any ulterior motives. The reason why we're bringing this critical issue before this board without appropriate discourse the day before the services could basically be suspended. However, that timing does trouble me. It was an email from my office to the administration that laid this point out, I believe 2 weeks ago, that we haven't heard anything back from the administration and that we were growing concerned because we didn't know when the contract was set to expire and we didn't want it to be brought up to the board at that edge and force the board's hand as it relates to the urgency and the critical nature of the work that we're talking about here today. So I'm just going to be very clear and bluntly, this is deeply troubling to me. Because again, the administration who basically runs this board, has 3 out of the 5 votes on this board, has decided to bring this topic back to the board, knowing the board's concerns and complaints, right before this contract, which again provides critical services to the health and welfare of the city, decides to bring this back to the board the day before the contract is set to expire. That is deeply, deeply troubling to me. Despite the decades of this board consistently allowing these contracts to come through, waiving requirements, ensuring that we were blocking out minority and women businesses, it appears that the administration is putting this board in no other posture but to vote this out, knowing the troubles that we have from a health and safety and welfare perspective of our city with our emergency, our fire, our police, men and women that go out every single day to protect the lives of citizens. And this is a vital part to their communication. At this point, are there any other questions and or concerns from members of the board? At this point, I would like to ask the board go in recess for 15 minutes. It is 10 o'clock. I hear the bells ringing. I'll bring us back at 10:15, but I would like to, again, put us in recess for 15 minutes. Any questions or concerns before we go into recess? Thank you.
Anybody else back yet? So one of the nice things about being one of the kids that reads during recess is you're back in line at the end pretty quickly.
Hey, team, we're gonna proceed. Give me like 2 more minutes, sorry. Members of the board, general public, this is the September 29th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Estimates. It was already called to order, then placed in recess at 10 o'clock, brought back out of recess at now 10:16. For the record, I am Council President Nick J. Mosby, and we are dealing with the item that could be found on the agenda, pages 55 through 56, item number 7, contract number 8,000. It's the 800 megahertz radio facilities maintenance agreement that has been awarded to Motorola, and this is calling for a 1-year extension. As discussed many times on this board, not just by myself, but also by the mayor and Comptroller Henry, to really do away with the business as usual practices of this board. Not speaking in the vein of ensuring that diversity, inclusion, and equity has been part of the millions and millions and millions of dollars that flow through the city on an annual basis. Does not reflect the characteristics of our city, does not reflect the demographics of our city, and it shouldn't reflect the morals or aspirations of who we are to become in our city. We know that this board has been an instrument of the bigotry that has played out in our city, systemic issues that have forced many problems in our city. And it is us, the leaders of the city, have decided that we will continue to take a new approach. And I think this highlights a need for us to take a reset, for us to allow this to be a beginning point. I'm willing to do the work, Comptroller Henry, as well as to the administration. I think I've proven that since we've all taken office since December, but things have to drastically change. The fact that this extension was put on this agenda and was pulled off by my office to highlight that there was no participation in this was a problem. The fact that we are approaching a critical need of providing these services and this extension needing to be approved because the contract will expire in a day is a huge problem. But I will never put the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of Baltimore in jeopardy, even based off of this unfortunate action from the administration. in putting this on, again, the agenda the day before. I think that we are all committed to breaking down the barriers of systemic racism. I think none of us would like to be at the forefront of it. This is not specific to this contract, to Motorola, or anything that we've talked about today. This is just specific to the operations of this body and the way that it's been able to perform for several decades. With that said, I'm going to call on the administration to still provide me with the information. Unfortunately, my electrical engineering telecom background kind of puts me in the middle of understanding and knowing exactly what this type of work is. So I'm really interested in understanding and looking at the output of the analysis of the due diligence of the administration, from the review of the scope of work, and for the items that we feel we do not have a vendor that does not have the certification, the bonding, or insurance capability, or experience. I would like justifications for each item of that scope of work. Definitely interested in understanding and knowing the next steps associated with the RFP. I'm going to demand of the administration that I be part of that from the beginning, so we do not run into this issue come the next contract associated with this particular issue. I'm going to also demand of the administration that we provide particularly critical, urgent items like this, timely access for public discourse on this particular body. Again, I'm not going to stand in the way and play any games and ask for an emergency procurement for these services. We're in the midst of a global pandemic where hundreds of our residents have died of COVID-19. We know that variants are taking off. Our children are afraid, seniors are afraid. So this idea of creating this public scary around not having access for our emergency folks to communicate with one another is not the position of leadership that I'm willing to participate in. With that, we're going to vote this out today, but I would stress to the administration that understand and know this is not to happen ever again. If there's a critical item that we know that it's a critical item, we will provide this board the ability to communicate and have that public discourse to ensure that we are all on the same page, particularly knowing that the administration has 3 out of the 5 votes here. So with that, are there any additional questions, concerns, or comments from any members of this board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't be long. It's just that listening to your comments reminded me that I believe the administration is in the process of reviewing the procurement process on a very high level. And it seems to me that one point we might want to make a point of having injected into that discussion based on the situation we've just dealt with today, is that moving forward, we should probably look at having contracts, especially the MBWB goals or lack thereof, if there are waivers, reviewing those at the board level before a contract goes out on the street, as opposed to at the complete end of the process where there's already been months and months of work on people's part, only to find out at the board level that there were no goals. And so there is nothing to be done at that point. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that if there was some way for us to review contracts before they go out, we might save ourselves a lot of confusion and frustration at the awarding point months down the line. But that's all I wanted to share. Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. And I'm looking forward to seeing someone moving this item.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
I move that we approve the extension of the service agreement to Motorola.
I second.
It's been proved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. I'd like for the record to note that I am a nay on this particular vote. This item passed the Board of Estimates today with a 4-1 vote. Are there any additional questions or concerns, general information that members of the board would like to bring up at this time before we close? Hearing and seeing none, there's no new business before the board at the desk. We will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. The Board of Estimates will reconvene on Wednesday, October the 6th at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we love you.